follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Community Matters is here to ask questions that matter to our community life. Over the coming weeks, we will be looking into various subjects of interest to the local community, such as loneliness and the government's selection of Peterborough as one of 6 cities to flagship the Inclusive Cities and Integration projects. There's plenty to stay tuned for, so do make sure you send us your comments. Now for tonight's show, we are looking at homelessness. And what an appropriate topic for this very wintry weather, where no one would wish to be left out of doors with nothing to do and no shelter, overnight or during the day. We are joined by Stephen Pettican from the Light Project and Winter Night Shelter, and Sean Evans, Housing Needs Manager for Peterborough City Council. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First, let me turn to Stephen Pettican. Having worked at Peterborough City Council for 10 years, Stephen now works hard to support the homeless in Peterborough. He has supported the Peterborough Winter Night Shelter for the last 3 years, and this last year is leading the amazing project. Being Peterborough born and bred, Stephen has a real passion for the city, has many friends, family and colleagues here, and continues to support the community and faith sectors to make the city a better place. A very warm welcome to you on Salaam Radio.
Thank you, Adrian.
Now, Stephen, can you tell us what is the Winter Night Shelter? How does it function and who is it for?
So we've been running the Winter Night Shelter for the last 3 years. We started a pilot in May 2015 for 3 weeks, but fundamentally for 13 weeks over the winter season, we take as many homeless people off the streets as possible. This year we started on the 11th of December and we will finish on the 11th of March. It's a partnership between 7 different churches, and those churches host our homeless guests each night of the week and offer lots of support, lots of kindness, lots of love, an evening meal, bed, breakfast, and just really help people to come off the streets and feel like they're valued. In the daytime, we work with our colleagues at Peterborough City Council to help our homeless guests move forward into accommodation. So, you know, not only are we feeding and giving people a bed and taking them out of the, you know, the freezing temperatures that we're all experiencing at the moment, we're working really hard with partners in the city to try and work through ways to help people move from the streets into accommodation.
So it's not just a matter of meeting an emergency need, it's about trying to help people to consider the lifestyle that they've got and to find a better way?
Yes, so it's all our guests that come, you know, they come voluntarily, and they recognise that you know, as they come, they're able to get some support to move forward. Yeah.
What about volunteers? Do they need to have any particular training? And
yes,
do you have quite a number?
Our amazing volunteers. So yeah, the project couldn't work without all our amazing community volunteers. So just tallying up this year, so we'll have probably over 200 volunteers this year supporting the project. The last tally on last year's Winter Night Shelter was 248, and those volunteers come from people in churches of faith, come from people of different faiths, come from backgrounds of no faith, people in Peterborough who just really want to support homeless people move forward and get off the streets. So to volunteer for the project, we ask all our volunteers to undertake a training session, and this year That was I think that was, when was that, Sean? November?
Yeah, November.
November time. Sean helped us on that. Just to make sure everybody understands the project, everybody's safe, everybody's working together. So moving forward, yeah, we're looking for, you know, good volunteers who are willing to help out and support within some, you know, some good boundaries, you know, that make everybody safe, our volunteers and our homeless guests safe. And we're looking to work with, you know, people from the community who want to help the homeless.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And of any night of this winter, how many people are we providing accommodation and support and care for?
Through the night shelter?
Yes.
So our project works on 8 beds per night.
Sure.
And the rationale for that is that that's a good number to make sure the group dynamic is safe and healthy. You get too many people in a room, you know, sometimes it can get a little bit tense. So 8 is just about the right number, we've learnt from experience. But to give an example, last year we had 44 homeless guests come through. So somebody will come and stay with us for 3 nights, an example, and just get off the streets for the 3 nights. And you know, they may have had a breakdown with a family member, and we'll encourage and support them to re-establish that relationship with the family member and then return back home. Some of our other guests have stayed for 2 months, for example, and we're working hard. They may have fallen into debt with a housing provider in the past and got lots of debts, and we may have had to work through trying to support them to get through that debt to be able to move forward into accommodation in the future. So, you know, we give them a good window, you know, to try and deal with those things and show that they're in a position to actually move forward and respect and sustain the accommodation that they're offered in the future. So there's a flow of people coming through. So 8 every night. Today, we moved 2 of our homeless guests into temporary accommodation in the city.
Wonderful.
So, you know,
does any particular good news story come to mind?
Oh my word. Well, not wanting to go into the history of some of our guests, but we've started we recognised that some of the people that were with us left our project and went into the community and felt a bit alone and isolated because they were linked so well to so many wonderful volunteers that when they left, got their own little flat, they felt, you know, they couldn't keep going because, you know, they were very lonely. So we started a mentoring programme this year. Just coming online, testing it out, seeing how it goes, and we've had a lady in her middle years who had some real challenges, not really through a bereavement of a family member and some confusion over a housing, and ended up homeless on the streets. So really sad, you know, to see a lady, you know, on the streets. So she was on the streets for a number of months, came with us. And she'd had it tough, and she was downcast, you know, emotionally, her self-esteem was low. And the long and the short of it is she was with us for 3 or 4 weeks. We managed to support her, encourage her, build her self-esteem up, and work with our partners, local authority, Longhurst Housing Group, and she moved into temporary accommodation. Our mentor, in the midst of that, got to meet her while she was on the programme, and supported her through it now in the accommodation, and has worked with another charity in the city, Hope into Action, which will offer this young lady a longer term accommodation placement for approximately 18 months, 2 years. So she's moving forward into a really nice house with another young lady, nice accommodation, linked to other volunteers in the community that house is in, and onwards and upwards. She's got loads of talents, loads of skills, you know, is really the sort of person that next year wants to come back and volunteer and help others that have been in the situation
wonderful.
she's in. So I'm really pleased, really
it
pleased
sounds
for her.
as if we believe in people and their potential and give them that encouragement and support and friendship, then they can make the best of what life they can have.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. Yes,
that's wonderful.
Yes, yeah.
Now let me turn for a moment to Sean. Let's bring Sean into the conversation. Sean has been working in housing and homelessness for the council for 15 years. And for the last 7 years, he's managed the housing needs team of 30, responsible for giving advice and assistance to households who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. They also manage the waiting list for social housing, of which Sean tells me the council owns none.
Yep.
And you do try to allocate the available accommodation through the Peterborough Housing Register. You fulfil the council's statutory duties around homelessness, including the sharp end of homelessness, which is rough sleeping. Sean takes a personal lead on much of the council's work around homelessness and also rough sleeping, with obvious support from our register housing providers and voluntary and faith sector partners. Sean, what are the immediate issues and concerns that you're dealing with?
Well, what a question. So homelessness takes many forms. Homelessness can affect all of us. Nobody is away from homelessness, and just one change in your life, one change in your circumstances, you could very quickly be accessing our services when you never expected that you would. Homelessness over the last few years has increased. I think that's been well documented. Homelessness in general has increased, and obviously rough sleeping, which is the most visible form of homelessness, has increased as a result. So just to give you an idea of the demands that we're facing at the moment, we've just over the last couple of years, last year in particular, so financial year 2016 to 2017, we saw a 40% increase in the number of households that were actually approaching us as homeless. That's an unprecedented rise for Peterborough. We went from around 1,100 households presenting to us the year prior up to 1,500, and well, nearly 1,600 households. Obviously that comes with pressures, the additional demands that were placed on the team, the additional demands that were placed on accommodation providers, that in the main couldn't be fulfilled because of the lack of supply of accommodation that was available to us. The lack of supply comes around because of a number of reasons. Lack of affordable rented accommodation being built, the lack of affordable rented accommodation being made available for allocation through the housing register. Access to the private sector and private sector accommodation becoming more difficult because rents have been rising. As demand dictates, the rents rise accordingly, and with more people wanting accommodation, the more expensive it becomes. Many people are dependent on some assistance from benefit systems, and the changes that have happened in the benefit system, the move from traditional housing benefit to universal credit, has caused issues with private sector landlords and concern with private sector landlords, and just rising rents and the housing benefit entitlements and universal credit entitlements not rising at the same time has meant that many people who never expected to face homelessness have become homeless through no fault of their own in a lot of cases. So that's some of the pressures that we've been facing. Now, homelessness and rough sleeping, which as you said in your intro, is the sharp end of homelessness. They go hand in hand. Generally, when there's an increase in homelessness, there's an increase in rough sleeping as well. I think what's key with rough sleeping, and one of the biggest challenges that we have, is that there is no one-size-fits-all model to help a rough sleeper off the street, and actually it's really an individual approach to encourage somebody to leave the streets. And in some cases it will appear to be relatively simple, and the provision of accommodation is all that's required, but in other cases it is very small baby steps in building up confidence, building up that engagement, support from external organisations, and like the Light Project and the Winter Night Shelter, that is that piece, that bit of support that the local authority are either not able to offer, or the individual that you're working with feels more comfortable accepting it from an organisation like the Light Project, which is the important factor that's reliant on them engaging with us.
So there's a feeling of a partnership between the public sector and the charitable and faith sector.
Absolutely, yeah. We as a council couldn't do this and or fulfil our requirements without the support of registered providers with the voluntary sector and with the faith sector. It is very much a partnership. It has to be.
And the way you're describing the complexity of the causes and the complexity of needs that households, not just individuals, might be having, it's not one easy, simple fix. Find a roof over their head and everything else in somebody's life will be all right.
No, absolutely not. And that's sometimes the most difficult thing for people to understand. They see homelessness as an easily resolved issue. Give somebody a house and you've no longer got an issue. But there are people that find it difficult to maintain accommodation. They find it difficult to deal with the what we would consider to be normal day-to-day tasks and responsibilities. They find that difficult, and they need that extra bit of coaching, training, support to be able to handle those day-to-day issues.
Right at the moment, we're in the middle of the blast from Siberia.
The beast from
the east.
The beast from the east, yes, indeed.
Its teeth in the last couple of days.
And I've been given an acronym, SWEP.
SWEP,
SWEP, which I'm told stands for Severe Weather Emergency Protocol. So what is that, and what's happening that's different at the moment?
Okay, so Steve has spoken about the winter night shelter and the great work that the Light Project are doing. But Steve's also said that they're able to accommodate up to 8 rough sleepers at the Light Project. Now, our most recent rough sleeper estimate in the city showed that on a snapshot that we took in November, we had 31 people that were sleeping out at that time. So great, the Light Project and the work that they're doing is supporting us in meeting the need, but it's not enough. Okay, so as a council we offer severe weather emergency provision, okay, and that is in partnership with Axiom Housing Association, or traditionally Axiom Housing Association, now Longhurst Group, and we offer emergency shelter for those individuals who aren't able to access the night shelter, and we get them off the street in the warmth to reduce the risk to them in the most severe weather conditions. So the trigger for us when we activate that provision is when we have the weather forecast of 1 degree and below for 3 consecutive nights. That is our trigger.
Sure.
Also, if there's an amber weather warning issued by the Met Office for wind, rain, hot weather, unlikely in this country, but cold weather as well, we'll activate the SWEP provision so that there's further provision to keep people off the streets.
Now, if any of our listeners know somebody who's homeless or might themselves be homeless or become homeless, how do they access this special provision?
So it's direct access, Fairview Court, a hostel managed by Axiom Housing Association at number 1 Oundle Road.
Okay.
They can turn up there and there'll be provision available for them.
And I think I was hearing it's late in the evening when it opens. It's not a daytime.
It's not daytime provision, no. So it is just over the nighttime period to support people through the cold nights.
Wonderful. And that's 1 Fairview Court.
So it's Fairview Court, number 1 Oundle Road.
Fairview Court, number 1 Oundle Road.
Yes.
Peterborough, of course. Let's bring Stephen back into our conversation. And let me give you some information that I've got from the Government Department for Communities and Local Government. They publish figures for England concerning homelessness. And the last figures they have are on the 30th of September last year, where the number of households that reported being homelessness or threatened with homelessness were offered housing assistance had increased by 6% in just 3 months. Across the whole of England, that's 15,290 households And I think you've been saying it's getting worse in Peterborough as well.
Yeah, so we've seen an increase in the last 18 months to 2 years. There's been a steady rise in homelessness across the country since 2010, 12. In Peterborough, we didn't experience those increases so much from 2010 to 2015, 16. It's really been the last 18 months to 2 years that we've then caught up with the rest of the country. We've seen an unprecedented rise in homelessness over the most recent periods.
Stephen, earlier today we met up. We
did.
hadn't planned to meet.
No, we
but,
didn't.
Out of the blue, you telephoned me, and I
Yes.
think that was to do with SWEP as well, and daytime provision for people who are finding themselves on the streets. Can you tell us a little about what's been happening today?
What we've managed to do in response to conversations with the local authority and Sean's team, what we've managed to do is recognise that it's freezing cold in the daytime, and it's not very nice, to be out there in the cold. So we've opened some very simple daytime space that will be open for the next 2 weeks at St Mark's Church on Lincoln Road. So that will be a space to come in from the warm, get some support, get some advice in terms of, I'm homeless and I'm not sure what to do, so we'll be able to advise people and connect them with the right people in terms of support and moving forward. But primarily to get out from these freezing conditions in the daytime. So that's quite exciting. It's quite a new move for us to do.
And that's a new service, and I think that is also helping to meet a need that the public around Peterborough, and particularly in the city centre, might think, nobody's doing anything for these people. They're lined up, sat outside Tesco's or in shop doorways, whereas there are possibilities that people can pursue. But the numbers are rising. Are we fighting a losing battle?
Well, I hope not. I really do. I don't believe that our efforts are futile. I do believe that we are making a difference. I do believe that we are moving in a very positive direction in relation to homelessness. As I say, the rises in homelessness are unprecedented. Talking about homelessness generally, as a local authority, we've recognised the increases in demand. We're taking positive steps to tackle that. The council recently has agreed to invest a significant sum of money, 30 odd million pounds, into a joint venture that's been set up with the council and Cross Keys Homes in order to speed up the supply and increase the supply of affordable accommodation. That will support homeless households that we're currently accommodating temporarily. It will obviously increase the number of affordable homes and rented homes that are available for individuals. And as far as rough sleeping goes, today is a perfect example of the change. I mean, the Light project has been in operation for 3 years. Prior to 3 years ago, there was very little in terms of provision. At night time, let alone daytime provision. So today is a bit of a landmark, if you like, in not only recognising that we've got sufficient nighttime provision, but also in these extreme weather conditions that we're experiencing now, there's also something in the day. So no, I don't think that we're fighting a losing battle. We are achieving great things, and we're over the last few months it certainly feels that we've turned a corner and are making much more positive impacts.
Yeah, and I think in terms of are we fighting a losing battle, Adrian? I think, for me, it's person by person. So I don't really think of the big context. I think that the fact that I was working with somebody today and I was able to help them today. And, we overcame that small little battle today, and I think we take our wins, every day on this, So I'm encouraged in terms of what we're doing, and as Sean says, there's been a lot of movement over the last couple of years in the city in terms of responding to the homeless in Peterborough. So it's very positive.
Oh, we're heading for a short break, but do stay tuned, as after the break we will be continuing to explore the vital work of providing for the homeless across Peterborough.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Sadly, millions of orphans living in the poorest countries lack the necessary support for a healthy childhood. These children have to endure lives of hardship without the basic necessities that would help them to grow, to learn, to live. Let's show them that we do care. Let's brighten up their future. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
Ever thought about joining the fire service? Come along to our information event in Peterborough and find out more on Wednesday the 7th of March from 12:30pm to 2:30pm at the Gladstone Park Community Centre. Booking is essential by visiting camsfire.gov.uk. For more information, call Fazana Qusair on 07825 506 691. We value diversity and actively encourage applications from all sections of the community. You could soon be starting your firefighting career, serving communities across Cambridgeshire. Wednesday, 7th of March from 12:30pm to 2:30pm at the Gladstone Park Community Centre. Remember to book at camsfire.gov.uk. There's more to being a firefighter than you might think.
Need a great place to chill out? Look no further than The Lounge for quality food and drinks at a great price. Try our varied menu: pasta, seafood, burgers, grills, salad, soup, rice and sides. Also hot and cold drinks, milkshakes and mocktails. Leave room for our exquisite desserts. The Lounge, 417 Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge, friendly service with a great atmosphere.
Need car parts quickly and at a great price? City Auto Parts offer competitive prices, trade accounts and a delivery service in and around Peterborough. For all your parts and accessories requirements, visit City Auto Parts, 30 Fitzwilliam Street, Peterborough, PE1 2RX. Call us on 01733 347711 or visit www.cityautoparts.co.uk.
Dervish Creative, in association with PCA, Salaam Radio and Vivacity, presents A Foreign Policy, poetry that spans from Punjab to chicken shops, Green Street to Lincoln Road and everywhere in between. Saturday the 3rd of March, featuring award-winning activist and creative director Zain Haider Awan, published playwright and London laureate Zia Ahmed, author of Little Boy Blue and winner of Poetry Rivals 2016, Jamal Mahmood. Doors open at 7:15. Tickets are limited. Book today online at vivacity.org or the Key Theatre box office or the Allama Iqbal Centre. A Foreign Policy, Saturday the 3rd of March, 7:15 at the Key Theatre.
Are you looking for a fun-loving and professional nursery? Then call Bright Bambini Montessori on Peterborough 306565. Teaching EYFS curriculum and Ofsted approved. We also offer forest school and Arabic. Limited free funded places available. Call 01733 306565 or email info@bbmc.uk. Bright Bambini Montessori.
Peterborough's community radio station, Salaam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Welcome back to our listeners to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM. You can message us on WhatsApp on 07745 278 978 or email us at studio@salamradio.co.uk. This is Adrian Holdstock presenting Community Matters, the radio show for all communities across Peterborough and beyond. We're talking tonight about the vital work of supporting the homeless across Peterborough, and we have with us Sean Evans and Stephen Pettican. I want to come straight in with this question about people that we see on the streets during the day, particularly in the city centre where shoppers are out going about their business. Why are there people on the streets during the day? Are they homeless and truly in need, or is something else going on? And what is your advice when we are asked for money or food to give to what appears to be a beggar?
Is that to me? Yeah. Okay. So, yes, there will be some people that are on the streets that are asking for money, that are rough sleeping. There is no doubt about that. There is also going to be some people that are on the streets that are asking for money, who aren't rough sleeping and have accommodation. How you're able to identify them, you can't. You won't be able to identify the individuals. My views on giving to people that are asking, sometimes quite controversial. It's very difficult to tell somebody who just human nature is to give to somebody who appears to be less fortunate than you if you're in a position to do so. Okay. But what I would say to anybody who does want to give to somebody on the street is, while you may be giving them food or drink, are you helping that person to make a change in their lifestyle? Okay. And what I would want to encourage people to do is to consider, rather than giving money to somebody that asks them on the street, to actually support organisations like the Light Project that are actually making positive change to support people to actually leave the streets permanently and setting them up. We were talking to a gentleman tonight at the project who, since he's been there, has actually started employment. Not only is he on the path to accommodation, he's also started a job, he's now earning, he's got the potential to make a positive change in his life, not just by securing accommodation. And actually, you'd be making much more of a difference by donating that £2 to an organisation like the Light Project that can actually take positive steps to help people to leave the street.
And gain their independence.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's always very difficult, and it'll always be a very difficult conversation, but rough sleepers can become dependent on the donations that they receive, and it can sometimes prove to be a barrier to them engaging with services like the Light Project.
And you mentioned dependence. It's been suggested that if they're given money, which they appear to be asking for food, it would go on a dependency of alcohol or drugs.
There is evidence to suggest that there's a high number of people that are on the streets who have a dependence on drug or drugs and alcohol and misuse. Misuse drugs and alcohol. So there is unfortunately a good chance that money that you're donating will end up in purchasing those illicit substances.
And some people say, well, I don't give cash, but I will buy them food. I will take them to McDonald's, or I will buy them some chips and hand them to them.
Yeah. And I would suggest that that's more positive. If you do feel that you want to give, then buying them a coffee or buying them a burger or something like that will be more positive than actually giving them cash. But also bear in mind that by giving them a coffee, they're not going to be using the cash that they will have available to buy themselves a coffee.
Yes. So again, you're giving them the prospect of continuing to feed a bad habit.
Potentially, yes.
So the best advice in terms of we want to be helpful to people who are homeless is to go through organisations and charities like the Light Project to enable them to offer the real help that is sustainable.
Yeah, I think so. For me, it's I've been in a position where I've over the years given a bit of money, given food, taken people for dinner, that are on the streets, and I think it's really difficult. It's a really emotive thing to walk past somebody and think you want to help, but you don't know how to help. As we were talking, I think it's as somebody working in a shop, they will be passing a homeless person being asked for money probably every day. And what happens over a period of time is you get to know somebody if you care for a person, you actually get to know that person over a period of time. And I think it's about, in a safe way, in terms of developing a relationship and a friendship, in terms of encouraging people to build self-esteem, to connect with services that might be able to help them, move forward, or change things, or how's things going, are you looking for work, or what's going on with your family, just as a friend would, to another friend, to encourage people to, how could you move forward. So I think it's, I think friendship, ongoing love, support, those sort of things. For me, it's not so much about should we give money or not. I think it's about, are we willing to invest more time in people, or are we willing just to and I've done it, give a throwaway £5 over here and then walk off and do my shopping. And I think time is really important for all of us. And I think if we want to help, I think time is something that we can help with.
I think it's such an important point. And when I go into town, I tend to be on a mission to go somewhere, to buy something or to see somebody, and to come back and make the next appointment. And it's that ability to say, this person might be just rather more important than my time schedule. I've never met them before. I don't feel comfortable looking at them, or perhaps starting to talk with them, but there's a human being in there, and there's a story in there. And I think your experience, both your experiences with dealing with homeless and rough sleepers, is that they're genuinely interesting people.
Yes, some of the most interesting stories I've heard are from some of the rough sleepers that we've engaged with. And every story is different. I think that one of the key points is that the amount of goodwill there is in this city, it really, it can't be totaled up. There is so many organisations and people that are willing to support the homeless. There really is. Pretty much every day, every night, there's provision available for any rough sleeper to get a hot meal. You've got the soup kitchen every night, running out of the bus station car park behind the brewery tap. You've got Children of Adam that are also supporting people with hot meals. You've got Food Cycle that are supporting people with hot meals. You've got the Winter Night Shelter. So, there's not any need for anybody to go hungry on the street. There's support there for them.
And of course there's food bank for people who may be in accommodation but have run out of the means to buy food. Let me move on. Before the break we were talking about the immediate issues of homelessness in Peterborough, and I mentioned government figures for households in difficulty. But I want to look at providing decent homes for our citizens. Here's another alarming statistic. On the 30th of September 2017, the number of households in temporary accommodation was 79,190. That's across England as a whole, not just Peterborough. But that was up 6% on the previous year. And it was up a massive 65% on the figure at the end of 2010. Now, I read from your biography, Sean, that the council owns no social housing. So how do we expand the availability of homes to meet our housing needs?
So yes, you're quite right. In 2004, Peterborough City Council transferred all of its housing stock to Cross Keys Homes, which was an organisation set up to take on responsibility of the management of those homes. So us as a council, we have agreements with a number of registered housing providers in the city, 10 in total, and we have nomination rights to those properties. So the housing register that you mentioned earlier that we administer essentially is anybody that is in need of accommodation who approaches us for assistance. We assess applicants on their level of need, given the accommodation that they may have available for them now and the suitability of that accommodation. Then housing associations advise us what accommodation they have available on a week-by-week basis, and we then allocate that accommodation to the person that's interested in the most need. Okay. I talked earlier about the investment that the council has made into Meacham Homes, the joint venture with Cross Keys Homes. I talked earlier about the increases in homelessness and the reason for that, and the lack of supply of accommodation, both from registered providers and also accessing accommodation in the private sector. Okay, so the work the investment into Meacham Homes will support the increase in the available accommodation through affordable means. We also need to harness the private sector, and we need to support the private sector, because, as I said, we can't tackle homelessness and rough sleeping without the support of organisations like the Light Project. We also can't meet the housing demand without harnessing the private sector and working with those private sector landlords. The best way that we can tackle homelessness is actually by preventing it from happening in the first place. We've talked about the investment in Meacham Homes. What we've not talked about is actually the support that my team are now receiving, given the increases in homelessness and the demand, the increases in the number of staff that we have to support individuals that approach us. We've got a new piece of legislation that's coming in April, the Homelessness Reduction Act, which gives us more power to support individuals earlier when they're threatened with homelessness, and places a duty on a number of public sector bodies to actually refer cases where there's a threat of homelessness at the earliest stage. So with the increased resource that we have in terms of staff and the increased notifications that we'll be receiving of people at risk, then actually we'll be able to make a more positive impact in keeping people in their homes in the first place.
But if you're looking at powers that enable you to keep people in homes where they might otherwise be evicted, does that work? Is that a dilemma? Does that work against the private sector landlords who want to invest in property and make their profit?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, most landlords that I speak to don't like evicting people. They want people to be in their accommodation. They want them to be good tenants. Often the reason that they're having to take eviction action is because something that's happened in the property, and it may well be a crisis incident that the tenant has had, something, just a payment shock, like the main earner in the household is, I don't know, has to have 3 weeks off work sick, doesn't get sick pay, and then all of a sudden they're in arrears with their rent, and they can't get their head back above the water. Cases like that lead to eviction, possibly unnecessarily. If that support was available at an earlier stage to get them back on an even keel, then actually we'd be able to rescue that tenancy, keep the person in there, rebuild the relationship between landlord and tenant, and actually not be dealing with a homelessness situation in the first place. And it's really, homelessness is one thing, and the provision of accommodation is one thing, but actually homelessness and the damaging effect that can have on a household, if we can prevent them from having to face that, then that is really our best win.
And does selective licensing have a part to play in that? Because that's a fairly recent innovation in Peterborough. Yeah,
selective licensing is key to making sure that private sector accommodation is of a good standard. There have been instances in the past where we've had accommodation that's been rented privately, which has been of poor quality, and selective licensing gives us the ability to inspect that accommodation to ensure that it meets the basic minimum standards of rented accommodation. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, I was at the Mayor's Leadership Forum last week, and amongst the ideas that were emerging was a dichotomy between looking around the inner parts of the city and seeing homelessness, and then seeing empty buildings. One in particular is the old DVLA Zenith building on Lincoln Road, and it's been empty for at least 6 years that I know of. That's a great pity. What can we do to bring empty buildings into use to meet housing needs? What do you think, Stephen?
Well, I think that's a question for sure. What can we do? What for accommodation?
I mean, if you were allocated that building,
in the
what
charge,
would you do with it?
Okay, so I think we're talking quite a lot in terms of what could we do with spaces in the city that are empty buildings to help the homeless in the city. From my perspective, what would I need? What would people need? Do people need if to move away from this street? Well, they need advice. They need information. They need guidance. They need advocates to help them sort of go through the system, as it were, for the benefits, housing applications, an advocate and a friend to work on that journey. They need people to broker in other support. So if I'm having a challenge with, I don't know, if I've had a challenge with depression, then I might need to broker in somebody to help me with that depression so I can overcome that. So in terms of empty buildings, it may be, could we have a space in an empty building where we could work with an individual and say, okay, where are you at? What's going on? Can we put together a bit of a plan and help you move forward in terms of from where you're at now and to go next? And that may be around a cup of tea, maybe around a game of chess, maybe around some relaxing, but actually having somewhere where actually is safe and warm, but actually, it may be, in that building you may have, an NHS dentist come in, once a week, because dental care and foot hygiene, if you're out on the streets a lot, some of those things can slip, or a link to a local GP. So lots of opportunities could come out of some buildings.
So multifaceted support, potentially in one location, rather than sending people across the city from one place to another with little slips of paper to access one service or another.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. No, just there's lots of number of different services out there, but you could use some of those buildings to operate across, multifaceted support across different agencies. Yeah.
Well, that particular building, if any of our listeners happen to know,
happen to own it themselves, listeners.
Yes.
So somebody out there might own it.
Or what the plans are for it to be brought into use to support community life, it will be wonderful to know. You can email us on studio@salaamradio.co.uk. Now, I'd like to give credit to faith groups in our community and the efforts that go to support the homeless. The Winter Night Shelter is based in 7 churches, and each night one of the churches takes the homeless through the week, and then that turns around over the 13 weeks.
Yep.
But in the longer term, what's the Christian community doing to help people find homes in the city?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? I think I've been very fortunate to watch the journey of the charity Hope into Action since it started, I think, maybe 7 years or so ago. And Hope into Action is a charity where they work with investors, they secure a house, they link the house to a church, and they take people who are homeless or ex-offenders off the streets into that house and support them on their journey of progression. So in Peterborough, Hope into Action has got 16, 17 houses now, and they've got 50 across the country, but having a real impact in Peterborough in terms of supported housing and accommodation. So that's one big organisation. I think, lots of good groups. There's a number of different churches, of which there are many in the city, that are doing their small and individual good and kind deeds that we won't be aware of. Hundreds of those things that they're doing. I'm very fortunate to get to experience that. We have 7 churches on the night shelter, but our volunteers come from 30 different churches.
Okay.
So lots of volunteers from lots of different churches that, on a Sunday morning, through some teaching or through some conversations or something that's happened in their heart when they've been praying, gone, oh, actually, I want to help the homeless. I want to walk, as my teacher, asked me to walk. So there are lots of things going on. But yeah.
So having a need and a focus through the Winter Night Shelter and the Light Project, Christians from different communities, different churches are becoming one community with a common aim and purpose.
Yeah, I think there's a real across the faith communities, across the Christian community, I think there's a real, as Sean says, there's so much goodwill in the city to help.
Well, you mentioned faith communities, and of course I'm sure we know of Muslim communities, Muslim charities that are supporting homeless as well.
Yeah.
You were mentioning Children of Adam, I think, to me earlier.
There's Children of Adam. I think it's Unite for Humanity, which I think is another charity. I think there's a number of different charities out there that are doing work.
I mentioned Children of Adam earlier on, and Children of Adam have been supportive of us today, actually. We talked about the sweat provision earlier. Children of Adam have stepped up to the plate to support us in the best way to describe it, if the Fairview Court provision that we have available became full, Children of Adam have stepped in to support us with emergency provision if required. In partnership with ICRA Academy over at Bretton, they'll offer further provision to ensure that nobody needs to sleep rough on the streets in this severe weather. And Children of Adam, I'm aware, also offer hot food provision in the same way that the soup kitchen do outside of the brewery tap in the coach park there.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So generally then, how can people work better together to support the homeless in Peterborough?
Wow.
What would you love people to do who don't currently get involved?
Yeah, I think for me, sometimes when we talk about working together and cooperating on activities such as this, people think that we've all got to really get close together and really merge and, change our own sort of individual ways and manners. And I think that's a put-off for a lot of people because we're sort of, we're given a passion to do something. So for me, it's not, I think it's about continuing to talk to each other. It's continuing to share what each other are doing. Sean mentioned that on every night of the week, people are able to get food. Well, if we're a couple of charities if we are going to give out food, don't both do it on a Monday night. One do it on a Monday night and one do it on a Tuesday night. So those simple principles of just thinking, well, I want to go and help somebody. Well, I want to, I feel I want to go out and give lots of sleeping bags. Well, actually, did I know that yesterday somebody else went and gave out lots of sleeping bags? Maybe today I could do something different and fulfil a need. So not trying to duplicate, what's going on already. So I think I had a phone call this morning from a charity I knew nothing about. It's called the 3 Pillars, which is a charity that's been helping the homeless in Peterborough for the last 18 months. I didn't know anything about them. She rang me at 8:30 in the morning and I was staggering around the snow, so I had to skid and stop and talk to this lady on the phone, answer it after I'd stopped. I'll just get that in there. So we were able to say, well, what are you doing? What am I doing? Let's maybe meet up in the future and see if we can complement each other moving forward. But Sean's sitting here, so I can say the right things. But it's sometimes, we do need to work with the local authority. We do need to work with those agencies that we sort of think, the police, they can be a bit harsh in these matters. Well, actually, we need to work with people that are maybe not quite the same as us, but actually see if we can find common alliances to find the good out of those common alliances.
What support would you most like from the local authority?
Would I quite like?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sean's laughing. Are we on live Facebook? I think we're on a good journey in terms of our partnership. I think, as Sean mentioned, 3 or 4 years ago, there was bits and bobs in the city, but there wasn't a huge amount. I think we've worked well together to, put in a professional context, put in professional boundaries, teased out in our differences, where we can find common ground and build together. What support moving forward? I think continued dialogue. Continued dialogue. This is what we're feeling. This is what the Christian community are feeling, which there are many, hundreds of thousands in Peterborough that actually are feeling this. How can we build that dialogue together and do good together and find
work
harmony?
with people of all faiths.
Work with
and
people of all faiths.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Community.
Yeah.
Our time is coming to an end. Thank you very much, Sean and Stephen.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for tonight on Community Matters. Remember, you are the community that matters. Good night.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Have you visited